I'm Remo, and this is the Daily Signal for Thursday, June 19th, 2025. Breaking news is developing on multiple fronts today, and these stories will impact your world in ways you need to understand right now. Here are today's top 10 stories. Breaking. UN admits it has completely lost track of Iran's bomb-grade uranium stockpile. Kyiv death toll rises to 28 after Russia's deadliest attack in months, American citizen among the dead. Israeli president declares goal is eliminating Iran's nuclear program, not regime change. Netanyahu's harshest critics now backing him on Iran as existential threat, unites Israel. Putin tells world to stay out, says Iran-Israel conflict is theirs alone to solve. Boeing 787 crash investigation launched as aviation safety concerns mount globally. 11 Palestinians killed by Israeli fire while desperately seeking humanitarian aid in Gaza. Iran's Ring of Fire. Strategy around Israel faces critical test as regional tensions explode. Trump's Iran legacy under scrutiny. Expert warns both action and inaction had consequences. Canada accuses India of foreign interference operations on Canadian soil. Now let's dive into each story and why they matter to you. This is the story that should terrify you. The United Nations has admitted it no longer knows where Iran's near-bomb-grade uranium is or how much they have. Think about that for a moment. The international watchdog tasked with preventing nuclear weapons proliferation has lost track of the most dangerous material on Earth. Here's what we know. Iran has been enriching uranium to levels dangerously close to weapons grade. The UN's monitoring equipment has been compromised, and inspectors have been denied access to critical facilities. This means Iran could potentially race toward a nuclear weapon without the world knowing until it's too late. Why this matters to you? Nuclear weapons in the hands of Iran would fundamentally reshape global security. Oil prices, international trade, and regional stability all hang in the balance. This isn't just a Middle East problem, it's a world problem that could affect everything from your gas tank to your investment portfolio. The clock is ticking, and the world's nuclear watchdog just admitted it's flying blind. The horror in Kyiv is still unfolding. What began as reports of 15 dead has now climbed to 28 confirmed fatalities after Russia's most devastating attack in months. Emergency workers are still pulling bodies from the rubble of a 9-story residential building that was completely hollowed out by Russian missiles. Here's the shocking detail. Among the dead is an American citizen, bringing this war directly to American families. The attack struck 8 different districts across Kyiv, targeting civilians in their homes while they slept. Ukrainian President Zelensky called it pure terrorism, and the evidence supports that assessment. The human cost is staggering: 75 wounded, families destroyed, and a city that thought it might be finding some stability once again living in terror. Russian drones and missiles turned a Tuesday night into a nightmare that search and rescue teams are still working through. This represents a dangerous escalation in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. When civilian casualties mount like this, it pushes both sides toward more extreme measures. The war that many hoped was stabilizing is clearly far from over. Israeli president has drawn a crucial distinction that could determine whether the Middle East explodes into full-scale war or finds a diplomatic path forward. He's explicitly stated that Israel's goal is not regime change in Iran, but the complete elimination of Iran's nuclear weapons program. This matters more than you might think. Regime change implies a full-scale military invasion and occupation. Think Iraq 2003. Eliminating the nuclear program suggests more targeted, surgical strikes that could avoid total war while achieving Israel's security objectives. The timing of this clarification is critical. With UN inspectors losing track of Iran's uranium stockpile, Israel is essentially telling the world, we're not looking to overthrow the Iranian government, but we will destroy their nuclear capabilities. This distinction could affect how other nations respond. Countries that would never support regime change might accept targeted strikes on nuclear facilities. It's a diplomatic chess move that could determine whether we see a limited military operation or World War III in the Middle East. The stakes could not be higher. Something unprecedented is happening in Israeli politics. Netanyahu's harshest critics, The ones who've been calling for his removal over Gaza policies are now standing with him on Iran. This is the kind of political unity that only happens when a nation faces what it sees as an existential threat. Think about this. Opposition leaders who've spent months attacking Netanyahu's leadership are suddenly putting those differences aside. They're uniting behind a single message. Iran's nuclear program poses a threat to Israel's very existence. This political consolidation gives Netanyahu something he hasn't had in years: a unified government with broad public support for military action. It also sends a clear message to Iran and the international community. This isn't about one prime minister's political survival. This is about an entire nation's consensus on national security. When political enemies unite, it usually means they're preparing for war. The question isn't whether Israel will act, it's when and how devastating that action will be. Vladimir Putin has essentially told the world to stay out of the Iran-Israel conflict, declaring that the solution must come from Iran and Israel themselves. This is Putin's way of saying Russia won't be riding to Iran's rescue if Israel strikes. Here's why this matters. Iran has been counting on Russian support, especially advanced air defense systems and diplomatic backing. Putin's statement suggests Iran might be on its own if this conflict escalates. This is Putin's strategic balancing act. Russia needs Iran's support in Ukraine, but Russia also can't afford to be dragged into a war with Israel that could bring in the United States. By staying neutral, Putin protects Russian interests while leaving Iran vulnerable. For Israel, this is green light diplomacy. If Russia won't intervene, Israel's biggest concern becomes whether the United States will support or restrain them. Putin just made Israel's military planning much simpler. A Boeing 787 crash has triggered a global aviation safety investigation that could ground fleets and reshape air travel. While details are still emerging, the focus is on potential technical failures, pilot procedures, and manufacturing defects that could affect the entire 787 fleet worldwide. Here's what you need to know. The 787 is one of the world's most popular long-haul aircraft, flying millions of passengers annually on international routes. Any systemic problem could ground hundreds of aircraft and disrupt global travel for months. Boeing's reputation is already damaged from previous crashes and safety issues. Another major incident could trigger regulatory responses that affect everything from flight prices to route availability. If you have international travel planned, this story could directly impact your plans. The investigation will examine everything from pilot training to manufacturing processes. The results could determine whether the 787 continues flying or faces temporary grounding while safety issues are addressed. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza reached a new tragic milestone when 11 Palestinians were killed by Israeli fire while attempting to seek humanitarian aid. These weren't combatants. They were desperate civilians trying to get food, water, or medical supplies for their families. This incident highlights the impossible situation Gaza civilians face. They need humanitarian aid to survive, but seeking that aid has become deadly. Rescue officials report that aid seekers are increasingly being caught in crossfire or targeted as potential threats. The international community is watching these civilian casualties mount with growing alarm. Each incident like this strengthens calls for immediate ceasefires and protected humanitarian corridors. It also complicates any future peace negotiations by deepening resentment and trauma on both sides. For Israel, these civilian casualties undermine international support just when they need it most for potential action against Iran. For Palestinians, it represents the daily reality of a population caught between Hamas militants and Israeli forces. Iran's strategy of surrounding Israel with allied militant groups, dubbed the Ring of Fire, faces its biggest test yet. This network includes Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and various groups in Syria and Iraq, all designed to threaten Israel from multiple directions. But here's the critical question: can this ring still burn? Recent Israeli military operations have significantly degraded many of these groups. Hamas has been decimated in Gaza, Hezbollah has been weakened by targeted strikes, and Syrian-based groups have been disrupted by ongoing regional conflicts. Iran's strategic calculation was that this ring would deter Israeli attacks on Iranian soil. If Israel struck Iran, these groups would open multiple fronts, stretching Israeli forces thin and potentially overwhelming their defenses. The reality today is different. Many of these groups are struggling to maintain their own operations, let alone coordinate a multi-front assault on Israel. This weakening of the Ring of Fire may actually make an Israeli strike on Iran more likely, not less. Middle East expert Karim Sajjadpour has delivered a sobering assessment of Trump's Iran policy, arguing that both action and inaction carried serious consequences. This analysis matters because Trump may return to office facing the same impossible choices with Iran. Trump's maximum pressure campaign crippled Iran's economy, but also pushed them closer to nuclear weapons. His withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal eliminated constraints, but didn't eliminate the program. The assassination of Iranian General Soleimani showed strength, but also prompted Iranian retaliation. The lesson, according to Sajjadpour, there are no good options with Iran, only consequences. Every action creates a reaction, and every inaction creates a vacuum that Iran fills with more aggressive behavior. This assessment is crucial as current policymakers weigh their options. Whether it's continued sanctions, military strikes, or diplomatic engagement, each choice carries risks that could reshape the Middle East for decades. The Canadian Intelligence Agency has accused India of conducting foreign interference operations on Canadian soil, a bombshell allegation that could shatter diplomatic relations between these two democracies. This isn't just about spying, it's about influencing elections, intimidating diaspora communities, and manipulating Canadian politics from abroad. Canada has become increasingly concerned about foreign interference, particularly from China and Russia, but adding India to this list represents a major escalation. The implications are enormous. India is a key strategic partner for Canada in countering China's influence, and these accusations could complicate everything from trade deals to defense cooperation. Canada's large Indian diaspora also makes this a domestic political issue that could affect voting patterns and community relations. For India, being lumped in with authoritarian regimes as a perpetrator of foreign interference damages its reputation as a democratic partner. For Canada, it represents a recognition that foreign interference isn't just coming from adversaries, it's coming from allies too. Looking across today's stories, three critical themes emerge that will define the coming weeks and months. First, the Middle East is approaching a point of no return. When the UN loses track of bomb-grade uranium, when political enemies unite behind military action, and when major powers step aside to let conflicts play out, we're seeing the buildup to something catastrophic. The Iran-Israel conflict isn't just threatening regional stability, it's threatening global security and economic stability. Second, the concept of civilian immunity is collapsing. From Kiev to Gaza, we're seeing a world where civilians are increasingly targeted, whether deliberately or as collateral damage. This erosion of basic humanitarian principles makes conflicts more brutal and peace more difficult to achieve. Third, trust in institutions is breaking down. When nuclear watchdogs lose track of nuclear materials, when aviation safety is questioned, and when allies spy on each other, the international systems that have maintained stability for decades are showing dangerous cracks. These aren't isolated incidents. They're symptoms of a world order under unprecedented stress. The decisions made in the next few weeks, particularly regarding Iran's nuclear program and the ongoing conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza, will shape international relations for years to come. The stakes have never been higher, and the margin for error has never been smaller. This is the Daily Signal. I'm Remo. Stay informed, stay prepared, and we'll see you tomorrow with the latest developments on these critical stories.